Hello and welcome to Blender tutorial on the Riz Ranger channel. I am of course Riz, and this will be learning about some basic physics while using Blender. Now, the version I'm using is version 2.79, and generally just talking about rig body from just some simple objects like a sphere, box, plane, and just a general mesh that you would use to animate to start to moving another object. So, like I said, when putting some physics on your object, you would want to click the rig body. Now, it'll already indicate that you've already gave a rig body. There wouldn't be any of this here yet, so you click on it, and then if you want, in case you make a mistake or want to get rid of it, you just click the X, remove rig body. So a general rule, if you want to start practicing some objects with the physics, or just fooling around with the surface response, is to have like a little demo set just like this, and have the timeline just a little bit short so it keeps looping. You kind of just, and then you just do a little bit of quick changes to, say, the mass, friction, bounce. Oh, something's not here. Let's give this 100. Let's do that. The ball has 1000 mass. What if we gave it 5? Yeah, it slows down. So, generally you would want to have a plane where it's passive. Otherwise, if active is the box, the sphere, the other sphere, and you make sure your plane is passive. If it becomes active, everything just falls. So we use passive for the ball. Wait for it to come back. The ball shape would be a sphere. Would be in the sphere. You've got box, sphere, capsule, cylinder, cone, convex hull. That's the default setting. And there's mesh. I choose mesh for any object that's I make on my own. But that's not always the case. It could lead to some funny results. But yeah, this is to teach you on what happens if you're not careful when you fiddle around too much, or you're just having a basic understanding about. I'm just going to be rambling on stuff like this, and I'll just stop if I don't know what I'm going to say. Like now. So, as I say, mass is pretty much just the weight and how much gravity is going to work with the ball. Now, just going to assume that with anything on just going to assume, or the computer, I'm assuming, is just having its gravity on. Just everything has the same gravity. Just the 9 point, like Earth's gravity 9.8, or was it 9.72? Anyway, but we can fiddle around with friction and bounce. Now, friction is resistant object to movement. This, let's say for the plane, the difference of increasing friction makes it much harder for stuff to move. Like, the difference of it is, if it's 0 friction, the plane becomes like an ice skate, an icy floor, if it increases at max to 1, it's something of like a carpet, but something in the middle is like a wooden floor. Like it can move stuff, but it has maybe some resistance. So I say we reduce the friction. Go. The block just slides. So we give this 0.5. Now everything like its mass. That's 5. It's 5. It'll move. It collides. It moves. Simple. Now for bounce, if you already saw of this little sphere's bounce, it's a bounce of 1. So when it's just a little tricky. There's a little bit of maths in it, but I'll get my best shot to say it. With bounce, it's bounce is kind of gives the difference of, well, I'll show what it says here. Tensity of object to bounce after colliding with another. 0 stay still, 1 equals perfectly elastic. So the difference of this is becoming either a say jumping castle, but the object just bounces down and up like a trampoline. So it would be the equivalent of what that material is used for, the bounce, those giant bouncing balls. Now, I'm just checking here. Friction and bounce can change by what you want by typing it. At max it does 1 to 0, but you can change it. You can go it higher, but it becomes, it leads to some peculiar, not peculiar results. It just, whoop, there it goes. Let's give this, let's go higher. Yep. See, if something goes higher than 1, or make sure that both the two, hold on, let's stop that. Yeah, here's the one. Yeah, that's the peculiar bit. That's really a peculiar bit. If both surfaces, if the object is 1 and the plane or the other object that bounces is 1, it'll bounce the same height as it was. But if it's one of those objects is reduced to a decimal, eventually when it keeps bouncing down to it, the thing will slowly bounce a little lower and a little lower and a little lower. So sometimes you might mistake it for, it could be mistaken for gravity, but just, or you could, or how you want to take it, just for gravity. So 0.5, 0.9. So let's give this a 1. So if we just give it, see if this all equals to this would be the equation of 1.7. Like, basically, it's bounce times the bounce times bounce, as long as it doesn't reach to 2 or past 2. Like, if the bounce reaches to 2, it'll keep on bouncing. No, that's not right. No, that's not what I meant. If the bounce is always up to, if the bounce equals to 1, it'll stay bouncing. dun, dun, dun. And sometimes it will be even, it'll bounce even higher. But let's, at some point, dun, dun, dun. I think this is the bounce. I think that's the default bounce, so 1000. Whoop. So mass has no relevant to bounce. It's just the so yeah. So 1.8 times 0.5 of bounce. Also, we have to take and consider friction. So just put this. So let's increase the friction. See, friction has no problem. Friction is not involved. So there is wait. It's just slightly going. Thing is slightly bouncing slowly down. So there's maybe not an exact number. Maybe it's just if this bounce is 1.9 or both bounces are just added up. Usually it's a lot. It'd be possibly just a lot of trial and error. There is some equation. There is some math to it, but usually practice would be a lot better. So, see, I've been talking about bounce for so long. So yeah. So now here's something that I want you to figure out. Oh no. Now, regardless of how this is being moved, I already showed that an object that's being animated is the thing that's going to hit it. It's going to move. It's going to hit those dominoes. And this has a mass of 30. It's kind of the mass I choose. Shows that got almost to the dominoes, but the dominoes are just moving on their own. They're just falling, but they don't. They just have their own. They just sporadically explode around. So I am not sure on what the reason is, but let's see if we can find out. Let's start with having the plane just 100. Looking at this bit, and no, it's not the plane. So that's the problem. What if there was a lot of bounce? Now I know that this is probably false, but it is fun just to test these things out. So, no. Now, for the dominoes itself, they're stuck to a friction of 0.5 and a 0 bounce. And there's one thing that I would wish the Blender would do is able to select a number of amount of objects and able to change possibly the texture or material, the texture, and the physical bodies, and also adding more than one modifier to that, adding the same able to change Set it again, modifying all the objects in one go, rather than one at a time. I mean, you can select a number of these and change the scale and rotation, but not the other things I mentioned as of now of this time recording. So yeah. So if anyone knows the reason why all the dominoes just sporadically jump around, please feel free to put it in the comments. Really like to know why. So after all this, the thing you can take from this is that when dealing with physics, you would want to have a small setup and testing out your object and seeing how you want to make it go. Because if you want to if you just keep changing a few bits of settings, you may choose the setting you may want. Well, and there it goes. So, there you go. A little bit of basic physics for Blender or in Blender. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because I tend to do a few more of these little Blender tutorials. And yeah, next time.